Hey everyone, I'm Alan Schimmel, CEO of Techstrong Group. You know, you can't walk 3 feet today without tripping over something AI. But how real is it, especially in IT? What do CIOs need to know? What do developers need to know? What do you need to know about AI? We're going to be discussing all of this and more today on Techstrong Gang. All right, so we've got an AI power-packed show today here on Techstrong Gang. Let me quickly introduce the gang if you haven't been following along. To my left here is our Techstrong Chief Content Officer and all things AI for us today, Mike Vizard. Joining Mike and I, not here in our Boca studio, is our Techstrong AI editor, Amanda Razzini. Amanda, welcome. And of course, from way out in Denver, Colorado, is our CTO and Chief Research Officer at Techstrong, Mitchell Ashley.
Hey.
Mitchell, welcome.
Thanks, Alan.
And our special guest star today, another one of the gang members. He has become quite the AI expert. You may know him from his newsletter, which is widely circulated, The Artificially Intelligent Enterprise. But he's much more than AI even, my friend Mark Hinkle. Mark, welcome to the gang.
Thanks, Alan.
All right. Mike, why don't you kick things off today?
Well, we have a story this week up on Techstrong.ai talking about how 2024 will be the year we operationalize LLMs, large language models for the uninitiated. And I guess I want to start with a chat with Mark, because I know you were here for the hackathon that we had, I think that was 2 months ago now.
More. I think it was August.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And what are you seeing from folks or hearing from folks about operationalizing this stuff? Because I feel like last year was the year of irrational exuberance, and this year we're getting down to some work, but it's not clear to me we actually know how to do this.
Yeah, I think you're right, Mike. I think, last year was the year of the AI pilot. By the end of this year, it'll probably be the year of scaling AI. And I think it comes down to a couple things first one is the expertise to do it. The second thing is really the security around data going into it. So data privacy is at the top of the list for people. So I think the low risk, high rewards, customer service, things like that, they're already public is where people are starting. And then, the third thing is we're trying to put this stuff in production, and every week there's a new LLM or small language model coming out. So picking a vendor, picking a technology is really tough, because every week there's a new shiny toy coming out. So that's sort of the three, buckets I look at. Is I think we are going to see it, but low risk, being able to do so securely, and then picking a technology that is best of breed and stable enough to go into production.
Yeah. I can't figure out whether or not people are going to actually build LLMs, or if they're just going to take something like a vector database and expose some data to it and try to customize it that way. It seems like that's the path of least resistance.
But that is an LLM. But that is building an LLM, right? You take your unstructured data or whatever, you take your data, you put it in your vector database, you feed it in as an LLM, and now it may not be as big as the set that ChatGPT runs on or something, but it's an LLM nevertheless. But as Mark said, maybe some of them become small language modules, SLMs, right? But here's what I think is really interesting. Just like everything else in IT, sooner or later it comes down to the data, right? It's all about our data. And I think data privacy is a huge knock at the door this year for AI. But I do think that this is the year where a lot of people will create their own LLMs, SLMs, or whatever you want to call them. I think people still think there's a gee whiz wow factor in that.
Mitch, you agree?
Yeah, I do. I think that, we were talking on another Techstrong Gang about the vector database is kind of being the entry level for IT, as opposed to trying to go build an LLM, which is much more complex, but that is behind the vector database. It seems to me there was a good analogy in that article about we're kind of going through the cloud evolution again. Oh, it's very costly. Oh, how do we secure it? Oh, what about our data? Oh, there are 50 million options. What do we choose? What do we standardize on? We're kind of going, but in a much more accelerated pace with AI. So maybe there's lessons learned from cloud. I don't know, but it's deja vu all over again.
Amanda, what's your sense of what's going on? I know you and I have a separate podcast, and we were just talking about how, frankly, this AI stuff is shining a light on the fact that we kind of suck at managing data and have for a long time. And we've been hiding this issue from folks, and now we have to go clean up our mess.
Yes, and it's really hard once you get unclean data to get it out of there again. And the issue with all these LLMs is there are so many choices. All the business leaders are really overwhelmed with the number of LLMs and how to use them, and they really need more specific tasks, not these generalized LLMs. So figuring out how to get more specific tasks done by smaller models and then clean data in those.
So look, this is an issue we saw when we were doing the interviews. If anyone had a chance to see what we did at AWS reInvent, I think the better companies are creating a middleware layer where you could plug any LLM you want virtually in there, right? And that's the beauty of that kind of system, because just like we saw with cloud, right? Remember, everyone said, "Oh, hybrid cloud's a no-brainer," but I don't know who would use multi-cloud. Why complicate your life like that? Well, the fact of the matter is, as the different cloud providers have evolved, each one does certain things a little better, right? Azure has some great functionality that maybe you don't quite get with AWS, and Google has something you don't quite get with the other two. I think the future is I could plug in different LLMs. I'm not signing up for the Apple walled garden model here. I want an open structure. I can engage and disengage, plug in and unplug LLMs as I need them and as I see fit. And I'll use the right LLM for the job.
Mark, what are you hearing from folks out there? Because you've been a little quiet, so I'm going to call on you.
Yeah, I think, just sort of tying together what we're talking about is, I think what we're going to see, and Alan struck on it, is there's probably going to be a layer that routes conversations based on the right expert. So let's just say each one of these LLMs has an expertise. So for general stuff, we may use a general LLM, like one coming from OpenAI. But then what we will do, and when going back to the training question, is when there needs to be a deep domain expertise, like financial or medical, those are the places where you'll train. So, Kaiser Permanente is a big health provider. They're going to train their own private model. Bloomberg has their Bloom GPT, which is very much trained on their 100 years of data. And what will happen is, based on some set of middleware policies implemented by today, I just saw Kong, one of the open source API gateways, released a new project that actually will, route to the doctor, route to the financial analyst, or route to the generalist based on that. And in that case, then when they go to the generalist, they'll take that data using RAG, or retrieval augmented generation, and pull your data from the database to make it more likely to be accurate without having to retrain. So that's where I see things.
I'll tell you, so I think the action in this upcoming year isn't going to be on the ability of people to take unstructured data into a vector database and create an LLM or SLM. I think that becomes commodity, anybody can do. I think the real issue is, just like we said, prompt engineering is becoming a job. Training engineering, right? LLM training engineering is where the money is, right? Because I could use any old AI to go take some data and put it in a vector database and spit out an LLM or SLM. Training that machine or that system to optimize it for my employees or my organizational use. That's where the money is. And I think that's what we're going to see, people who know how to train these models.
All right. Speaking where the money is, we have a separate article on the site talking about, well, CIOs are all for AI, it turns out. I have a slightly cynical take on that, so I'll just start it out with, it seems to me CIOs have been feeling a little left out on the whole digital transformation thing for the last few years, and AI puts them back at the center of the thing because, as we were just describing, there's a boatload of data that has to get managed and kind of orchestrated, and somebody's got to figure out how all this stuff works. So, Mark, what's your take? Are we going to see, CIOs back in this conversation, or is it all in the realm of the data scientists and those guys are still sitting on the sidelines?
Well, I think they definitely, I think 25% of new IT budget projects are allocated to AI. So their buying power is, pumping up, and they have a mandate from their boards and their C-suite to, their peers in the C-suite to go out there and capitalize on this trend. But, the vendors that are providing that outside of Microsoft in the AI space, they're going to have a whole new crop of vendors to actually, adopt things with a lot of maybe IBM as well. But the things that are cutting edge are, I think are going to be something that slowly creep into the enterprise. But I think they have the spend. I don't know if they have the knowledge. And this is, this paradigm of AI is a lot different than cloud. Cloud was just taking what you already had and putting it on someone else's computer. AI requires a lot more machine learning, a lot more expertise and stuff that they're not used to, and a whole new crop of security problems, which Alan knows the security space well, is, you understand how things go into your servers, but a lot of this AI, Gen AI infrastructure is a black box. So I think they're going to, be challenged to do it well.
A couple of things there. First of all, call me cynical, but let's be real about why CIOs are so hopped up on AI. Number one, they got budget to buy stuff, and they love buying stuff. Number two, though, they got their heads, a lot of their headcount was chopped, right? A lot of budget in other areas were chopped, and it's not just the CIOs, it's the CMOs, especially the salespeople. They're all have less headcount, less resources, and have to produce more output. And they see AI as the golden ticket, as the golden calf here, right? That's going to get them, bridge that miracle layer of doing more with less. And that's what's driving this whole thing. When we look at security, though, I think right now, most people who talk about AI security are talking about data. Right? Securing my data, that AI doesn't suck it in and make it available to other people. I think one of the things we're going to see this year is, as AI gets more involved in developers and in the development and the pipeline of CI/CD and software development life cycles, we're going to need to worry about AI security risk in the software supply chain. And that's going to be a huge thing.
Amanda, is this just a bunch of old guys being too cynical, or what?
No, it's absolutely the concern. It all comes down to it.
Go play in front of your own house.
Get off the lawn, right?
Yeah, get off my lawn. No, but I think that's what we're looking at,
All right, we talked about security briefly, and I want to talk about a move by Microsoft, Google, Apple, and others to join something called the AI Safety Consortium. And I got to say, I was a little concerned about AI, but now that I see that Microsoft, Google, and Apple are actually working together on anything, I'm terrified. Because, normally they hate each other. And so it must be really scary if they got to come together to figure out how this stuff works. So, Mark, what is your sense of all the noise out there around safety and AI? And of course, it's election season, so we're worried about misinformation and all kinds of stuff. But what's real and what's not real here?
Yeah, I mean, I read the article, and like you said, I was equally terrified when you get those folks in a room trying to collaborate. But the thing is that the actionable thing that they were talking about is watermarking, Well, there's tons of ways to do deepfakes without watermarking. And it just reminded me of the old saying that if you outlaw guns, only outlaws will have guns. And so, I don't know if, if you're really a sophisticated deep faker, you're probably using something that's already out there and open source and training your own models to do, whatever, hijinks you care to. So I think it's great that you surface the issue, but I don't know what they can do that's actionable and will enforce, other than they're all going to agree to make it hard for you to use, Apple or Adobe or any of the major tools to do deepfakes. But I don't know if it has any teeth.
I don't know if we have any teeth in it either, but here's the thing. And this is a almost uniquely American thing, right? When something goes wrong or someone gets in trouble, they go to rehab. I don't care whether it's sex rehab or drug and alcohol rehab or whatever, but they rehabilitate themselves. I think these hyperscalers are trying to head this off at the pass and starting a rehab, 12-step program for AI security here. And this way, don't worry, Mr. User, because we're all in rehab on this, and we're working together to make it happen. What will actually come out of it? I don't have high expectations, but the question is how real is the threat?
Mitch, I think that this is just an attempt to head off the government before they start showing up with regulations. And I think it was Ronald Reagan who said the 9 scariest words in the English language is, "Hi, I'm here from the government and I'm here to help." So are we just trying to get in front of that or what?
I don't think pie was in there, but go ahead.
Yeah, but this is definitely part of it for sure. I mean, that's why the tech companies are engaging with the regulators and saying, let's work together, right? Because they know they're going to run off and do the wrong thing. I think I'll take the non-cynical view of it for a moment. The upside of this is this consortium is housed within within NIST, U.S. AI Safety Institute. So they have their own kind of organization in NIST. And NIST is a pretty reasonable organization to work with. They come out with good frameworks and standards. I'm not saying they're perfect. And by the way, there's also Cisco and IBM and Intel and Adobe and Amazon and HP and God knows who else in this consortium. So they'll all kind of duke it out with the Microsoft and Apples of the world in this. So we'll see if anything comes out of it. There's my skeptical part.
Amanda, what's your faith in government like these days? You're in Texas. What are you hearing?
Well, my biggest question is, yes, we need rules and regulations, of course, but you can have all the rules and regulations, but are bad actors going to adhere to those? So how are we really going to, save ourselves from the risk if bad actors, but they're not really going to follow the rules or the regulations?
So. But once you have a rule, and this goes to the rule of law, you can't prosecute someone for violating a law till there's a law. So now this will create your laws, so to speak, your regulations, your compliance mandates. And then those who don't meet it, the question is, what could you do to them? Do you ban them? Do you shut them down? Do you fine them, et cetera, et cetera? But I will tell you something, this whole argument of doing it before the government does, that worked when we lived in a very different world where it was the U.S. These days, the real action, the real government bite comes from across the Atlantic and what the EU does. And I don't care what all these other companies do as a consortium, the EU is going to wind up setting some standards here that everyone is going to have to adhere
they've already
to.
passed their
Well, they got their first
AI.
ones in there, yeah.
I just think there's a bunch of folks in Russia and China looking at us and having a good laugh going, AI safety.
It's never, right, yeah. Well, and that's the whole point. To Amanda's point about and the outlaws who have guns thing. Look, they're going to be rogue states and rogue players who flout it. But does that mean we cut off their traffic? I mean, the EU knows how to put bite into their rules, right? And you hope for the best. I don't have a lot of confidence in our government putting some regulations in place.
All right. So, Mark, I wanted to get your opinion on this other story, probably maybe the last one we get to.
Okay.
and I laughed when I read this story, I have to say, but maybe not for all the wrong reasons. But so OpenAI CEO Altman wants $7 trillion to go build AI chip plants. $7 trillion. That is larger than the GDP of half the countries on the planet. And if he wants $7 trillion and everybody else wants $7 trillion, we're looking at what, $50 trillion to go build AI chips? Do we need these things? What are they going to do? And what's real here?
So I latched onto it, and his original statements sounded like he was going to try and raise that himself. What he's talking about is creating an ecosystem where chip production for AI is takes it out of the hands of few and puts it in many. So it's an ecosystem so that NVIDIA isn't the only arms dealer in the AI race. He's already invested. He also has a big invested in Cerebus, I believe, is the chip manufacturer. But I think what he's talking about is creating a supply chain that doesn't have a choke point because he sees the value in AI. He's probably also seen how close he is to artificial general intelligence, the super intelligence that's higher than humans. And he realizes they put out a paper in the fall that said basically that even without data, you can get leaps forward by compute power.
Yep.
So I think what he's trying to spark is investment in chips beyond NVIDIA and a few players like AMD and Intel to have a broad availability of silicon that can do AI training and serve AI inference and other things.
You know, I learned a lesson a long time ago in tech. Very few things are revolutionary, they're evolutionary. And those who don't learn history are destined to repeat it, right? When you look at cellular devices and the chip manufacturers, Qualcomm became a de facto monopoly. NVIDIA has the same potential here. I think he's trying to head that off. I think there's also, it's not just Sam Altman, there are national security and national economic reasons behind this whole push. We don't want those NVIDIA chips or the next generation GPUs being made in Taiwan where they're under the sword of Damocles or whatever, however you pronounce that Greek fellow. The sword of China, right, who may attack or not attack or whatever. We want those chips built in the US. The whole Biden infrastructure thing set aside a lot of money to do foundries here in the US. We want to develop, if GPUs are going to be the next hot chip, we want them built here. Not in Russia, not in China, not even in Europe. We want them built in the US. And I think that's a big driver for this whole initiative.
I'm not sure people in Europe care if they're made in the US or not. But, Mitch, I'll ask you this question. I think it takes, if you ordered a GPU today, you might be waiting until Christmas, maybe, if you're lucky to see it. So the question I have to you is, you know, are we overly dependent upon GPUs technically anyway? And these things were built for graphics, and we're using them to process algorithms, and maybe we can have chips that are optimized for algorithms.
Well, you're right. That's where we started, was with the kind of graphic GPUs. There's an NVIDIA, for example, has H100, now the H200 model of their chip, which is designed for AI. So we're seeing AI GPUs, if you will, that are coming out, and they're not the only ones. But obviously they're going to be very expensive. And I think that's our issue. We've got to get to a point where we reach that economies of scale and competition where those things aren't, we're not stuck in the Intel game where, you know, the CPU is the thing that we're kind of beholden to, and we're paying, you know, $50 a computer to be able to have that one chip in there. So I think that's part of, I read Altman's article, or the article about him, and I thought, well, there's a couple of things going on here. One, building factories in the US, that's going to get appeal. He's going to get government support for doing that. Two is also from a national security standpoint, right? Forgetting all of our, now we're concerned about AI and the impact there. But it's still early. I mean, it's expensive to buy any kind of a GPU, especially an AI one.
Yeah. And by the way, when I said GPU, that's just because what we call them today. But right. I think the whole point with Sam Altman's thing and the whole push behind this is next generation AI chips. I don't care whether you call them ZPU or UPZs, they're next-gen API chips, AI chips.
And the history of IT would show that increasingly things that start up at the top end of the stack eventually push down into the chip anyway. And so the performance of these things will get better, and hopefully they might generate less energy maybe and be a little friendlier to the environment.
That's a whole nother issue, and Mark and Amanda weigh in. But all these GPUs, the carbon footprint in making them and running them is extreme, right? So you got to start, because the other common trend we've always seen in technology is what starts out on hardware eventually makes its way to software, right? So can we build some of these things onto software? Can we reduce the carbon footprint? We're going to need to if we're not going to boil here like the frogs in the soup. I'm hoping with next-gen chips, we see that kind of progress.
Amanda, I know you published and written a couple of stories on Techstrong AI and some interviews around this issue. So what's your sense of, is it a real issue, or are we just kind of saluting it as we drive by, but we're not really, as the frogs, not paying attention to the fact that we're boiling?
No, it's definitely an issue. And of course, we talked about this a little on our podcast, that there has been a consortium formed to go over the energy output and the carbon footprint. And aside from just the energy output is the technological waste as other equipment set aside. So it's certainly an issue, and we need to figure out maybe we could use AI to harness the energy somehow in another way, so it's not going out into the atmosphere. But using AI to solve the problem.
Right. Hey, I know we're working with Mark on an upcoming shindig here. We'll touch on a lot of these issues. Do you want to get into that?
Yeah, sure. Actually, we got to start wrapping up anyway. We're coming to the end of the show. If you love AI, or even if you're just curious about AI, or even if you hate AI, I've got an event for you. We're partnering with Mark and the Artificial Intelligent Enterprise to do it's actually 24 hours, but it's a 12-hour segment that'll be repeated as we kind of follow the sun, if you will. And it is probably going to be the largest AI event to date, where it's free to register. We're looking for more speakers now, because we may have 100 speakers or more when all's said and done. We have sponsorships available as well. Mark, I don't have URLs and stuff in front of me, but I know you do. You want to tell people where they can go, and depending what they're interested in?
Yeah. We're going to be live soon with it. It's the AI Enterprise.online. So the AI Enterprise.online. And I'm really excited about it, because I think that there's lots and lots of tech news out there about AI, but it's one of the first shows that's really about people who have business problems and how they can solve them using AI. So to Mike's earlier point, people are stuck, and they're stuck because they don't have enough access to knowledge. We're going to have some amazing speakers from, the end users, vendors, researchers they're going to fill in those blanks for them.
Absolutely. And then on the AI vein, I should also mention, if you're attending RSA this year in San Francisco at Moscone Center, for the 8th year, we'll be putting on our DevOps Connect DevSecOps event. But this year, of course, with AI being the star of everything, it's DevSecOps in the world of generative AI. And we have some amazing speakers lined up for that, including, top-level security folks from OpenAI, Mend, Google, what's the other one?
Meta.
Not Archimedics. It's with an name. Anthropic. I'm terrible at names lately.
That one's a tongue twister.
Yeah,
sometimes.
and then and David Brin, who's a great futurist, Hugo Nebula Award-winning sci-fi author, and PhD over at NASA JPL, is going to be headlining, also giving out his books. There might be a Mark Hinkle spotting there as well, or a John Willis, or, Mitch, you're doing a panel there too, aren't you?
I'm doing a panel there too, myself,
Absolutely. So that's May 6th. If you got to go to RSA, you can get a free pass for Expo and that on techstrongevents.com. And by the way, there will be links off techstrongevents.com to the AIenterprise.online as well. So, guys, if that's it, does that wrap up?
That's it. I just wanted to say that everybody here was actually here and is not some fake AI thing that we put in there.
How do we know that? How do I know? Is that really Mark
Check the
Hinkle?
watermark.
They call me deep fake.
All right.
That's your online handle, huh?
Just a reminder, if you're watching this live, tomorrow it'll be Wednesday and we don't have a fresh show, but we'll be back Thursday with some great, more original content here on Techstrong TV. You can check Techstrong TV out at techstrong.tv. You can go to our YouTube channel, which is also called Techstrong TV. You can also watch the feed on any of our sites, DevOps.com, Security Boulevard, Cloud Native Now, Techstrong.ai, Digital CXO, or LinkedIn, or even Facebook. So there's plenty of places to watch us. This is Alan Schimmel for Techstrong. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks for joining us on The Gang.